Well, welcome to this very special edition of the Stogie Geeks show. I'll be your host, Paul Asadorian. I'm here with Mike Herklots from Nat Sherman. Mike, welcome to the show.
Glad to be here.
Yes. Mike, now, when I think of Nat Sherman, I think of like New York City, kind of chic, very, very stylish as you're dressed tonight. I wish I could be that stylish, right? But that's kind of what I think about. Talk to me about the Nat Sherman brand.
Well, thinking of Nat Sherman is correct. We're a brand that was born in New York City. Nat Sherman was a person before it was a place, and Nat opened up his first store in 1930 in New York City. After running his store for a few years, he started branding products that would be Nat Sherman products to be sold in the Nat Sherman store, and it really grew from there. So starting in 1930, we're now entering our 85th year. It's still in New York. Family-owned and operated business, still with the Sherman family, now in third generation, and it's a wonderful company. It's a great success story.
And you started with this cigar right here. Well, not this exact cigar, but this brand of
right.
cigar.
So when Nat, prior to opening his store, he actually acquired a cigar company, and it was called Schwab Brothers and Bear. And EPOCA was one of the brands that was made at that time for Schwab Brothers and Bear. Over years, of course, the Nat Sherman brand became more important to Nat, and the EPOCA brand eventually went away. Other companies took over the trademark, did other things with it. We were able to get the trademark back and now relaunch EPOCA with the same packaging, same artwork. Obviously not the same blend. At the time, it was a clear Havana, which meant it was made of all Cuban tobacco.
It was a Cuban Puro when it first came out, right?
Well, it was a clear Havana, which generally means that it was Cuban fillers, but it was not necessarily a Cuban wrapper. They were generally more domestic wrappers, and they were made in the United States.
Oh, that's interesting. So I want to dig right into it and talk about one of Stogie Geeks' most favorite cigars of 2014, perhaps of all time, and that's the Joel Sherman 75th celebration. What makes that cigar so special, both in the tobacco and the significance behind the name?
You know, it's the Sherman family really is an amazing family, and Joel, who's our CEO and our patriarch, was Nat's son. He's such a special guy. He's dedicated his whole life to this industry, and there's never been anything celebrating him. And Mr. Sherman turned 75 this year, and we felt it very important that we do something to really honor him. And he certainly never, if he was a part of the original discussions, he never would have done it because he's not that type of guy. But Bill and Larry and Michelle, his children, thought it was very important, and so we started working on it. And if you look at the format, just to start there, 7.5 by 46, it's not a format that's popular or that really exists.
Yeah, no, you're right.
So there's something very unique about the size, and there's something very unique and special about Mr. Sherman, and so it was important to emulate that. From a blend perspective, it certainly harkens back to an older school style, more finesse, more complexity, nothing that beats you over the head. But it's also a cigar that changes tremendously start to finish.
It does. And you have to pay attention to it, I've found.
Yeah.
You really have to pay attention.
I guess you don't have to, but you'd be doing yourself a disservice if you didn't.
Exactly.
So that journey start to finish, the 4 or 5 different fillers in that blend that 3 of them have some tremendous age on it. Putting all those things together in that size and then adding some of the artwork and the other things that make the packaging special. Only 2,500 boxes made. We partnered, of course, with the Quesada family, who does a lot of our manufacturing, but the Shermans and the Quesadas have worked together for many, many years. So it really was, it was such a special project to be able to bring to market. The Quesadas were very excited about it. The Shermans were excited about it. When we finally presented it to Mr. Sherman, he was really touched and thrilled by it, and I couldn't be prouder of it.
Nice. Now, while you started out with a cigar in the beginning, your brand, Nat Sherman, became very well known for cigarillos and cigarettes as well. So how did that transition kind of go from cigars to the smaller cigarettes and cigarillos and then back to premium handmade cigars?
So there was a customer of Nat's who was told he was no longer going to be allowed to smoke cigars on an airplane. and he was an avid cigar smoker and was very troubled by the idea of flying and not being able to smoke, which is so insane to think about now.
Today, right?
So he went to Nat and said, "I've just been told they're going to eliminate cigar smoking on airplanes. Could you make me a cigarette that tastes like a cigar?" And I don't think Nat ever said no to anybody. I mean, Nat was the kind of guy that if you walked in and asked for a candy bar and he didn't have it, he'd keep you talking while someone else went next door, bought a candy bar, came back, and sold it to the guy, right?
Nice.
So Nat said absolutely, and he made cigarettes in brown paper with Cuban tobacco, and made this guy cigarettes that would taste like cigars. And so since then, our cigarettes are all natural, no additives, no chemicals, no preservatives. They're made in Greensboro, North Carolina, in our own factory. They're very specialized. They're very curated.
Tobacco from North Carolina as well, or
from all over.
From
it
all
really
over?
depends. Forgive me, but I forget how many SKUs exactly we have. 26 or 29 different cigarettes.
Gotcha.
And each sort of family of blend is a unique blend, and those blends were really curated in a similar way that cigars are. I mean, the idea there was to create flavor, to create longer moments. So our cigarettes, even if you look at the packaging, it says "smoke less, smoke better." We are not a brand that pushes habits. We're a brand that really embraces the hobby, and so whether it's a cigarette, whether it's a cigar, if it's a Nat Sherman. We want you to really take a moment, sit back, relax, enjoy it, savor it, pay attention to it.
Nice. Along those lines, now, are you doing a blending seminar here tonight? So what does that entail?
It's certainly not a concept that's foreign at this point. A lot of folks have done a great job, thank you, with these sort of tasting seminars, blending seminars. Before Nat Sherman, I was with Davidoff for many years. There was a sort of a tongue tour, they call it now, where you smoke different tobaccos. Jose Blanco's done an amazing job at these sort of seminars. So it's sort of in that style where we smoke some very specific filler tobaccos in what we call surullos. So you smoke one particular type of tobacco in its entirety, and we smoke the filler. Tonight we're going to smoke the filler components of EPOCA.
Okay.
And my analogy I use when we do these things is EPOCA, the blend, the final experience is like the final movie that you see on screen. And what we do is basically a character study of the individual roles that make up that final production. So you might see a deep dive into a star, but you also might see a deep dive into a behind-the-scenes character.
Right.
But all of them make the whole story. So this
way
tour,
better description than I had of, well, you kind of taste the food before you do it when you cook, right? But the movie example, I think, is much better.
What we're in the end, it's an experience. And take a Broadway show, for example. You don't have the same cast playing the same role for eternity, right? So eventually, an actor moves on, a new actor comes in.
Right.
Well, in premium cigars, you run out of one tobacco, you run out of another tobacco. You need to find suitable replacements in order to maintain the blend year after year after year, right? So a Nat Sherman Metropolitan, for example, has been around 20 years. But when you smoke a Metropolitan, it tastes like a Metropolitan that you've enjoyed for the last 20 years. But obviously it's not the same tobaccos because it's impossible. So it's difficult to come up with a new cigar and a new blend. It's more difficult to maintain.
Yeah, absolutely.
So part of this process is also to talk about how to identify the character and learn the role the character plays in order to then find suitable replacements as years go on that can fill that role that tobacco plays in order to maintain that experience year over year over year.
So what are the different blend components of the EPOCA?
So tonight we're smoking two Dominican tobaccos. One is a Seco, one is a Ligero, and a Nicaraguan Ligero.
And then will we smoke the full cigar right after that, or will there be...
So we'll probably, I think we're going to start with the EPOCA first. To sort of get a snapshot and get familiar with the flavor. Then we're going to put it down and smoke the individual components.
Right.
And then we go back to EPOCA, and now you're tasting the correct proportions of those three
I see.
tobaccos, added with the wrapper, and then it really it highlights how even those three ingredients off kilter will
Change the experience
exactly,
completely. Yeah.
and it takes a negative and makes it a positive.
That's really cool. Well, I can't wait. Mike, thank you very much for coming on the Stogie
Thank you,
Geeks show.
Thank you.